So let's just dive right in. Who counts as a person? I mean, it sounds simple, right? Maybe a philosophical question. But in the eyes of the law, wow, it is one of the most complex and consequential questions there is. The answer to that question determines who has rights, who can be held responsible, and who is just, well, property.
And to really get to the bottom of it, we have to start with a bit of a paradox. Here's the thing. In the world of law, a person isn't always a person, and a person isn't always human. Yeah, I know. The legal definition is way stranger and more flexible than you'd probably guess. This quote just gets right to the heart of the confusion, doesn't it? We've all heard that phrase, corporate personhood. But what does it actually mean? It just feels absurd on its face because, we instinctively equate personhood with being a human being, with having consciousness, a body, and moral responsibility.
And this right here, this just perfectly illustrates the bizarre results. So you've got a corporation which is literally just a legal fiction that exists only on paper, and it has a constitutional right to free speech. Meanwhile, you have Happy, a highly intelligent and self-aware elephant who was denied the right to bodily liberty. And that's, the fundamental right not to be locked up against your will. In 2022, New York's highest court basically said, nope, she's a thing, not a person.
So let that sink in. A paper entity has more rights than a living, breathing, thinking animal. How on earth is that possible? How can our legal system produce a result that seems so completely upside down? Well, that's the mystery we're going to solve right now.
To understand how this all works, we need a totally new way of thinking about it. The key is to stop thinking of personhood as just one single thing. Instead, I want you to picture this: the personhood switchboard.
We tend to think of it like a light switch, right? It's either on or off. You're either a person with all the rights that come with it, or you're a thing with none of them. But that's not how the law works at all.
A much better way to think about it is like a complex switchboard. One of those old-timey ones. Every single right, every duty, every capacity, it's its own individual toggle. And for different entities, the law just flips different combinations of these switches on and off.
And you know what? This idea actually has a name. It's called the bundle theory, developed by a legal scholar named Visa Kirky. His whole point is that personhood isn't this one indivisible status. It's a bundle of separate incidents, these distinct rights and duties that the law can just hand out piecemeal. So what are these toggles we're talking about? Well, they're the fundamental building blocks of our legal system. We're talking about things like the right to own property, the ability to sign a contract, the right to go to court and sue somebody. And as we're about to see, you can have some of these toggles flipped on without having all of them.
All right, so let's see how this switchboard idea works in the real world. We'll look at how the toggles have been set for different groups. And maybe the most surprising place to start is with us, with humans.
We just assume a human being automatically gets the full bundle of rights, but that's a very recent development. I mean, for most of American history, the law systematically turned off key toggles for huge groups of people. Back in 1857, the Supreme Court in the Dred Scott case actually declared that enslaved people were not persons. It took constitutional amendments just to begin flipping those switches back on. And it wasn't just slavery. There was this legal doctrine called coverture, where a married woman's entire legal identity was just absorbed into her husband's. Her bundle of rights was effectively empty. The right to own property? Nope. Enter contracts? Nope. Go to court? All of those toggles were switched off. So the crucial point is, even for humans, this full bundle of rights had to be fought for, toggle by toggle.
This table really puts it all into perspective. Look down the adult human column. Every toggle is flipped on, just like you'd expect. Okay, now look at the corporation. The key commercial toggles, right? Owning property and entering contracts, switched on. And that's the practical reason for corporate personhood. It allows a business to function as a single unit in the economy. But look at the toggle for bodily liberty, of course, that's switched off. Now, contrast all that with the chimpanzee, a conscious, intelligent being, and yet nearly every single one of those toggles is switched off. Legally, it's considered property, with a smaller bundle of rights than a complete legal fiction.
Okay, so if the law can deny personhood to a sentient animal, it can also grant it to something with no consciousness at all. Let's look at one of the most radical expansions of legal personhood anywhere on the planet.
So get this. In 2017, New Zealand passed a law recognizing the Whanganui River as a legal person. And this wasn't just some symbolic gesture. As Maori leader Jared Albert explains, it was a way to translate an indigenous worldview into the framework of Western law. And here's the crucial part. It's a legal tool that gives the river standing in court.
the authority to have its interests legally defended against, say, pollution or misuse. That's something it could never do when it was just considered property.
So what does the river's bundle actually look like? Well, it has the right to sue and be sued to protect its own interests. It can have duties and liabilities. And to make all this work in the real world, it has 2 human guardians who act on its behalf. The law has literally flipped on key toggles, creating a way for the river itself to have a voice in the legal system.
And all of this brings us to the final frontier, maybe the biggest legal question of our time. We've seen personhood denied to humans, granted to fictions, and even extended to ecosystems. So what about artificial intelligence? Using our switchboard model, the whole debate gets a lot clearer. The people who are for it, they aren't saying an AI is a person like you or me. They're asking, should we flip on certain toggles for really pragmatic reasons? For instance, to fill what's called the liability gap. I mean, who do you sue when a self-driving car crashes? But the arguments against are just as powerful. It could create this accountability shield for corporations to hide behind. And does granting rights to a machine with no moral compass, no ability to feel anything, does that just trivialize what personhood even means?
So here's the big takeaway. Legal personhood has never really been about what an entity is on some deep moral or philosophical level. It's always been a tool that the law uses for very specific purposes. It's a bundle of rights that can be assembled and reassembled. The switchboard is the framework. The toggles are all just sitting there waiting to be flipped. The only real question left is, who or what are we going to decide to plug in next?